Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Retro Gamers, apparently. Larry here.
And Anthony here.
Episode 171. What's going on, Ant?
Well, I'm home. I don't know where you are, but I am home.
I am not home. I'm on the road. I am dog sitting for my cousins.
Very nice.
Actually, different, same family cousins, but different set of cousins, if you will, because it's a different dog now, as opposed to what I'm usually doing.
Well, and I gotta say the angle that you've set your phone up at, it's very intense because you're like looking down on us. You are you are larger than life this week.
Unfortunately, literally, I'm getting there. If I knew I was going to be on my phone, I was kind of all geared up for the laptop, which has a little bit of a different setup. It's a little higher and stuff, but I don't know what the Wi-Fi password is here, so.
Well, that's the first question you ask people.
I did, and by the time you responded to me, they were already on the road on their vacation. So
unacceptable.
And I thought I can go into like the Xbox or something, his Xbox, to figure it out, because I just figured it'd be messed. But no, there's no way to access it, which I could have sworn there was.
Well, I mean, there's this novel concept of texting.
He doesn't know it either. He just logged everything in once, and that's it.
Well, what about looking at the router?
I can't find it.
just ask him where the router is.
He's at a hockey tournament.
Oh, boy. Oh, okay. Well, then all is forgiven.
Well, his son's at a hockey tournament.
Oh, okay. So. Well, and as we record today is Hockey Day in America, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, today's the outdoor games?
No, it's just generally they do a hockey week.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Fair enough. All right.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Otherwise, everything here is status quo. Just
hunky-dory.
Yeah, living it up. Our 2020 video game challenge is off to a slow start. Very slow start.
Again, it's quantity, not quality. So there's a long time to go, and all that matters is that I'm back in the lead.
Yep. And that's fine. I've been trying my hand at a couple of games and failing miserably, so I haven't been sharing that with anybody.
So to bring people up to speed, what the hell did I beat? Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout.
Yeah, quality right there.
Again, I don't care.
I know.
To be fair, actually, it is a game I did own, and I just never. Again, it's a lot of these games for me. I would say half of them were just difficulty level. Half of them were just some sort of video game OCD, not OCD, like ADD or something that I just never got around to it.
Yeah, I never owned Birthday Blowout, but I did own Crazy Castle. I think the first one was.
Crazy Castle was an awesome one.
And that one I never beat, so I may have to match your Bugs Bunny with a Bugs Bunny.
You know, it's funny because I was gonna do Crazy Castle, but I'm like, let me do Birthday Blowout because, I actually said this out loud. I'm like, it should only take me like 15 minutes to beat, but the live stream was an hour and a half.
Yes, so I saw.
I wasn't expecting that at all.
Well, hey, sometimes it takes a while. I think it took me almost an hour and a half to beat the first Castlevania.
which is understandable, but I thought I only thought Birthday Blowout had like 4 levels. There's like 7 levels with 4 stages each or something.
Yeah, and Crazy Castle, it's either 50 or 100 levels. I can't remember. It's like
because that's more like a puzzle.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's a good series. It's actually a great series. Birthday Blowout, which eventually that damn bird Woody Woodpecker took over. But Crazy Castle started. Did you see his last movie?
I didn't even know he had a movie.
Yeah, like a live action movie came out like a year and a half ago.
Oh, well, I kind of missed that, didn't I?
It was on Netflix. I threw it on. I'm like, it's an official Woody Woodpecker movie, but
okay. Well, I guess it was no Sonic the Hedgehog.
No, and I want to hear about that. We're gonna get to that one later.
No. Yeah, and I know you haven't seen it yet, so I think we'll save that discussion for next week. Fair because enough. I want to talk back and forth about it. I don't want to just talk about it and not give anything away. Not that there's a lot to give away. So.
Well, let me say this. Just bottom line, did you like it or did you not like it?
Yes, I really enjoyed it. And a friend of mine who came with me, who I dragged him to Sonic because he dragged me to that awful Kristen Stewart movie, Underwater. And we had to watch that. Exactly. That is the exact response people get when I say the name of that movie.
Is that like an LA only movie? Was that like
nope? It was a movie with Kristen Stewart, and it came out like a month or two ago. I think it was last month.
I think it's called Charlie's Angels.
No, it's called Underwater. It's like it's basically like a sci-fi thriller horror that takes place underwater, where these
shocking.
Right, where these weird creatures are trying to attack them in this, underwater, science facility type of thing. Trust me, it was bad. It was so bad. And I looked at my friend and I'm like, yeah, you owe me. And he's like, yeah. To which his response was, he's like, I can't believe, he's like, there's nothing there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I go, there's nothing on her face. I go, yes, it's Kristen Stewart. I go, she doesn't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like I think she had an inkling of emotion in Charlie's Angels, but
yeah, she stone-faced for an hour and a half.
Awesome.
These things are trying to kill you. It's great.
Very Twilight.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, I dragged my friend to see Sonic in Retribution. And he walked out of it saying, he's like, wow, he's like, I enjoyed that way more than I expected. And I'm like, okay.
All right. I'm looking forward because
let's leave it at that.
I know you, and you're very hard on a lot of movies. So the fact that you're saying this about Sonic gives me good hopes. I mean, I was going to probably enjoy it no matter what because I just go to watch. But and
comedies are hard for me. I have a very hard time with comedy. Yes, I do. I have a 3-movie rule with comedians. By the time I get to their 3rd movie, it's not funny anymore because they just use it's just the same shtick. I laughed out loud several times during the
Really? I'm assuming you're talking about Jim Carrey.
He owns every scene.
Okay.
Every scene. Did a great job. I honestly think they just pointed the camera and said, go. And they let him do what he wanted.
Probably.
Yeah. Probably. And he was great. So, yes.
Cool. So we'll do that next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week.
All right. Sweet. And for those who have T-Mobile, and by the time this drops, maybe the deal will be gone. But T-Mobile was doing a $4 movie ticket for Sonic if you have T-Mobile. So just give it a shot anyway. Maybe it's still available. That's how I'm taking advantage of it. So, I mean, I'll totally pay full price, but $4 is $4. So
I paid 17.
There you go. I would have paid 16. It's anyway. So, all right. So that's pretty cool. Looking forward to that. And I think we'll get kind of right into the news, not the news, but what we want to talk about here this week.
Yes, we have a topic.
We do. And I am completely ripping this off of my good friend Tristan at Game On. So, Tristan, this one's for you.
You should have brought him on the show for it.
I keep trying to get him on the show, but the man runs a business. He's got to keep his eye on the ball. So, and when I told Anthony about this one, I saw a glimmer, and don't mind the
Toy Story pen.
The Toy Story pen.
We don't have the licensing rights to show that.
Good. Try and blur this out.
Great. I just got an email from Pixar.
Meanwhile, my face gets blurred out.
Oh, shoot.
So, so, he posted up this image, and this topic, what we're going to get to today is basically games that, some of these major franchises, not necessarily on every system that they were supposed to be on.
Correct.
Which is pretty interesting. So
it is. I mean, there are a lot of games where, for some odd reason or another, and we're talking about popular franchises that we all know, where for one reason or another they just did not release a game on a certain console.
So. Yeah, it's very, and the one that I want to kind of start with, which is the one that he posted on his social media, Game On Miller Place. I'll give the shout out there. And then I think subsequently we may have stole it for our social media, which is of course Retro Gamers Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Retro Gamers Pod on the Twitter is Metroid. And I never put 2 and 2 together on this one. No game on the N64.
Nope. No, they did not.
Which is crazy to me now that I think about it.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, Metroid was a hit on the Nintendo, but then Super Metroid was like a smash.
Oh, absolutely.
On the Super Nintendo. Like that game it's probably like one of the most well-regarded games on that system. So you would think it would have just made total sense. It's like, we're just going to move on to the N64 and we're going to make a Metroid game. Yeah, it was very odd that they didn't have it. And I don't know if you did a deeper dive into why they didn't have one, but I did.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a little bit of lack of resources to do really heavy. So
I did a little deeper dive into it to figure out what exactly happened there.
Let me guess. Was Metroid Prime supposed to be on the N64?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind that.
No, Metroid Prime was not.
Okay.
So here's what wound up happening. And this was they interviewed one of the co-creators of Metroid, Yoshio Sakamoto. And he worked on Metroid, Super Metroid, and then when it got to the N64, and this is a quote from him from an interview.
Okay.
I was actually,
you say it in Japanese.
Yes. Okay. But when you hear it, it'll be in English. I have a translator. So and this is quote.
Make that YouTube work. Go.
Damn right. I was actually thinking about the possibility of making a Metroid game for N64, but I felt that I shouldn't be the one making the game. When I held the N64 controller in my hands, I just couldn't imagine how it could be used to move Samus around. So, for me, it was just too early to personally make a 3D Metroid at the time. Also, I know this isn't a direct answer to your question, but Nintendo at the time approached another company and asked them if they would make an N64 version of Metroid, and their response was no, they couldn't. They turned it down, saying that unfortunately they didn't have the confidence to create an N64 Metroid game that could compare favorably with Super Metroid. That's something I take as a compliment to what we achieved with Super Metroid. So ultimately, that's why an N64 Metroid never got made. Now, here's the interesting thing, though. At the time, we had what wound up becoming probably the most... a game that redefined the genre, the Metroidvania series.
Yes.
When Castlevania Symphony of the Night came out. So, and I believe he commented on that at some point too, where they didn't put two and two together and try to make a Metroid game, like a 2D side-scrolling Metroid game for N64, because N64 was all about, we're moving to 3D graphics. So
I get that.
They didn't even consider like a Metroidvania sequel on the N64. They were just thinking, oh, we should do 3D, but we can't with this one. And that's pretty much why it didn't happen.
And I can completely understand that. But, nowadays, we all got like an Xbox One and a PS4. We have no problem to get like a 2D side-scrolling game with 8-bit graphics if it's brand new. But back then, it was all about 3D. It was all about pushing that N64 to its limits, which is probably why they moved Metroid to the handhelds. And I want to say here that, to me at least, and maybe you thought about it in this way too, like when we talk about skipping a system, the consoles for Nintendo, different than the handhelds for Nintendo. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like going like NES, SNES, Game Boy, and then, skip the DS. No, it's like, it started on Game Boy, get it to the 3DS, start on NES or something, get it to the Switch. So they just moved that type of 2D side scroller, which was some fantastic games. Metroid Zero Mission on Game Boy Advance,
right?
Metroid Fusion on Game Boy Advance, fantastic games. And then Metroid comes back on the GameCube with the 3D games that we know now, Metroid Prime.
Right.
As we wait for Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch. So, it's funny, back then, didn't you even remember? Maybe because I wasn't a fan of Metroid, I wasn't really clamoring for an N64 Metroid.
Well, I was curious as to why it skipped, because they were basically taking all of their franchises. I mean, Mario, Zelda, Castlevania, like Mega Man. Like they were going 3D. They were going 3D with everything, and obviously, the whole idea was they were thinking in a very linear sense. Because it's like, we had 8-bit 2D, we had 16-bit 2D, and we kind of started playing around with 3D on the Super Nintendo, with like F-Zero and stuff, like how they were trying to play around with that. And then obviously PlayStation came out and they're like, hey, Tomb Raider,
Yeah, exactly.
We're going 3D. So, and I really do think that just because they were competing with each other, like Sony and Nintendo and Sega at the time, they were all competing with each other. They never tried looking back. They were just like, we're just going to keep going forward. So, and it's all about 3D. 3D is going to sell this generation.
Yeah.
And like I said, I really do think Castlevania Symphony of the Night was the one that said, no, we can still make awesome 2D games. But even still, when they did that, it didn't really catch on everywhere else. You know?
No, it was mostly, to me, it was mostly a handheld thing.
Yeah, it really was.
That style.
Yeah, that's that. Right. And to your point, it didn't happen until later generations, like current generations, where it's like, hey, there are some really awesome 2D games that that are coming out today that are worth playing. Hollow Knight is one that I talked about.
Yes, I saw
that. I played. Absolutely. Let me tell you something. Like I clocked so many hours in that game, and it's a Metroidvania game on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. You can do wonders with 2D games. You can. Mm-hmm. It's just that, again, we're going back 20 some odd years where the technology was still advancing and they were still trying to one up each other. And
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So. All right. So what do you got? You got another good one there that you thought was weird that it didn't appear on something?
Yeah, I tried to stick to major franchises because I was like, okay, what are the really big ones that didn't make it? And I would be remiss if we didn't talk about this, especially since he just got a very successful movie this weekend, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yep.
Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega Saturn never happened.
And we're talking like, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and a lot of people say that one of the main reasons why that console failed was because Sonic the Hedgehog did not get a game on the Saturn.
That could be correct. And we're talking like Sonic proper, like an actual Sonic game, because Sonic R came out on the Saturn, but that was more like a racing game, kind of like a Mario Kart type.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a completely different genre.
No, it's a platformer.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. The Genesis, I mean, Sonic was even on the Master System as they were doing the two of them at the same time.
Yeah.
We get the Sonic and Knuckles, still on the Genesis. We get the Sonic CD on the Sega CD. And you think, what's going to be the next iteration of Sonic? And again, would it be we can go back to the argument of, do you do a 2D Sonic? Do you maybe try and do what eventually became Sonic Adventure?
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because you mentioned it, Ant, how, one of the maybe problems that the Saturn had, probably besides marketing, because I never remember Saturn being marketed here in the US, or at least in New York.
Right.
But there was no Sonic, like there was no game to catch your eye,
right,
for it.
Well, I mean, I think Sega Saturn, I think what they were when it first came out, I really did think that they were hoping Tomb Raider would be the game to
which
sell
started.
The system.
It was going to be on Saturn, yeah.
Yeah, it was going to be on Saturn, and then obviously it wound up on PlayStation and Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
But that was their big one. But then, like the first, I don't remember all the games that came out when it first released, but like they had a bunch of games. But again, notably absent was Sonic, and that was a big deal because Sonic was responsible, I think, for like half of the revenue that the Genesis wound up taking in.
Oh, I gotta believe,
or at least they accredited that. So, and then by the time, again, from the research I did, when Saturn came out, and now you had the Sony PlayStation to compete with, and of course you had Super Nintendo and then the N64. At the time with the Genesis, I think they had a 55% of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were actually leading Nintendo in the console war for a little while. When you got to Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation, all of a sudden, Sony snapped up like 40% of the generation or the audience in terms of sales. Nintendo had something like 35%, and Sega dropped to 12.
Oof.
Like they took a steep dive because of that. And again, a lot of people attributed that to the fact that you didn't have a Sonic game to sell with the system. Now, there was a Sonic game in development at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Sonic Extreme. It was originally supposed to be on the 32X. They were planning it for 32X, and they decided to move it over to the Saturn when it went into development.
I thought about the 32X.
Yes, most people.
I mean, is that considered a system or just an add-on?
No, I mean it's an add-on, but at the time they were selling it as it was a 32-bit.
Yeah, because
Genesis was 16 and 32X was supposed to be 32-bit.
Because 32X, I think, got Knuckles Chaotic, which can kind of be seen as a offshoot. Like that's like borderline Sonic game, like whether you count it or not. But which if you do, I'm fine with. But yeah, no, this okay, all right.
But yeah, so they took Sonic 32X and they wanted it. They moved it over and they were going to develop it for the Saturn. It was supposed to be the first 3D Sonic game. That was the plan.
Okay.
But there's like I don't want to get into all of the details, but there was a horror story that went on behind the scenes.
Really?
It was in development from 1994 to 1997 before they ultimately canceled it. Wow. But numerous staffing changes, morale issues. They were isolating their workers to get this thing done. One of the guys who was spearheading it wound up like coming down with like pneumonia, and they thought he was gonna die. Like they literally gave him like 6 months to live. Like
game better be done in 5.
Exactly. He wound up surviving, thankfully, but still, like there was like a whole mess going on backstage with this. And then finally, by early 1997, they canceled it, and then they moved whatever development they could from it over to the Dreamcast version of Sonic Adventure.
Which was phenomenal.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. But that's really what they needed on the Saturn if they wanted the Saturn to succeed. And then I also have a quote here from the former president of Sega of America, Tom Kalinske, who said that there were some challenges with Sega of Japan in terms of making a Sonic game for Saturn. Because again, I mean, Japanese companies, they're very hands-on. They're very controlling.
Oh, I'm sure.
And Sega of America really couldn't do anything without Sega of Japan. And if you read the book Console Wars, which I read, you'll read a bunch of weird stuff there where it was like Sega of Japan was constantly pushing them with the Sega CD, with the 32X. Like they had to do these things even though they didn't want to. But in terms of Sonic, Kalinske said, in terms of Sega of Japan, I think they just didn't understand how powerful Sonic was in the Western world. It's kind of a strange thing to say because they could certainly see the sales numbers and the amount of revenue that was produced and the passion that players and users had towards the Sonic character and the TV shows and the comics and, everything else that came with the licensing. And also around that time, in 1995, they were developing a script for a movie. They were going to do a Sonic movie at the time because it was so popular. They couldn't come to an agreement on what the movie was going to be, so it kind of fell apart. So there was so much in development during the Saturn years for Sonic that it just all came crashing down.
That's interesting. Speaking of that kind of Sonic movie, I was flipping through YouTube, not just recently, and somewhere on YouTube is like a full-length animated Sonic feature film that I think came out in Japan, but then was translated for here, but never actually got like this major release.
Oh, that's interesting.
I started watching it. It was interesting. Yeah, I gotta go find it again though. All right.
And of course, we all remember the cartoon series where Sonic was voiced by one Steve Urkel.
Yep, that cartoon was awesome.
Yeah, that cartoon was a lot of fun. And now we have Ben Schwartz voicing Sonic in the current movie, and he does a very good job.
Awesome.
But yeah, so Sonic unfortunately skipped the Saturn, but we did get 2 great games on the Dreamcast with Sonic. And then obviously when the Sega consoles went down, Sonic moved over to other systems, and still he's still popping up here and there. Sonic Mania was recent.
Sonic Mania is fantastic.
Yep. Cool. So yeah, so that's Sonic.
So I got the next game here is a Nintendo franchise. It actually, looked like it was done. It looks like they were finished with it. It skipped a couple of systems, but then came back for one more go at it. And I'm talking about the Punch-Out series.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, so of course it started off as the arcade game Punch-Out, the dual screen. You can download it on the Switch. And then we get Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which was a home run. Yep. No, actually, pun totally intended. It was a knockout. So Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and then whichever story you want to believe becomes just regular Punch-Out, and he's replaced with Mr. Dream. We move on to Super Nintendo, Super Punch-Out, which I never originally owned, actually.
Neither did I.
Yeah, but it was a great game. It had more of the arcade feel to it on the Super Nintendo than really the NES version. It was actually funny. The only reason why I bought Fight Night Round 2, I want to say, or Round 3 on the GameCube was to get Super Punch-Out. It was on the game.
Yeah.
It's the only reason why I bought it. No Punch-Out on the N64, and then no Punch-Out on official Punch-Out on the GameCube. So at that point, you're like, all right, it had 2 games, great, had a good run. I guess they'll never do it again. But here, then, lo and behold, they come out with Punch-Out on the Wii, which is, again, a great game. Fantastic game in the series.
Well, it makes total sense. I mean, because the Wii had the motion controllers, so now you're actually doing the punching.
Mm-hmm. And even that, correct. And then even you can still use the controller like as an old school controller. Mm-hmm. So you can still play the game like that. They even had on the Wii, it was like a My Nintendo Club unlockable, Doc Lewis's Punch-Out, which is your trainer, and basically just beating him up on the Wii. So I thought that was, I remember, again, not as much on the N64, but when the GameCube came out, I was like, oh, maybe it's time for a new Punch-Out. Maybe we can get a new Punch-Out. And when we didn't get it on the GameCube, or at least like halfway through the system's life, again, I just wrote it off as like, all right, well, we got 2 good games out of it. So, que sera, sera.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, and that's understandable. And again, it probably became one of those things of how do you translate the Punch-Out games to 3D? And it was just probably one of those things where they just didn't get there.
Again, that's probably with the N64. Yeah, the GameCube, I imagine they could have maybe brought it back a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. A lot of this is, during the times when they're trying to go 3D. They probably could have. I mean, there were boxing games out there.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, like, I just go back to, like, during the N64 generation or the GameCube generation, Ready to Rumble on Dreamcast. Exactly. You know, I loved that game. That game was really entertaining.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, so, I mean, it definitely could be done. They just did not go there.
No, they did not. So yeah. And I was actually, I got to say, when I presented this topic and we were talking about it, Punch-Out was one of the first games that immediately came to my mind when I thought about that. So that's I'm happy we got a Wii one.
I would have thought you would have gone with another franchise, but we'll get to that. It's on my list.
All right.
So
what do you got?
Okay. I'm going to go with a current, this is a current system game. I want to break the retro for a little, just for a minute.
All right.
But I want to touch on Grand Theft Auto because it's an interesting one to think about. But if you think about it hard enough, there has not been a new Grand Theft Auto on current gen systems, PlayStation 4, Xbox One.
That's true.
They have Grand Theft Auto 5, which was originally made for 360 and PlayStation 3.
Yep. And they remastered it.
Right, they remastered it for the current gen system. So everybody, so it was kind of interesting to wonder. It's like, why wasn't Grand Theft Auto 6 made for current gen systems? So, and I just wanted to bring this up briefly because, first off, the reason why is because Grand Theft Auto 5 continues to sell really, really well because of the online appeal. Yep. So they're making money like hand over fist on it. I think Grand Theft Auto 5 in terms of total sales, maybe it's somewhere like 100 million or something.
Oh, it's got to be. I mean,
it's crazy. But there is a Grand Theft Auto 6 being developed. The release date isn't expected. This literally came out like yesterday. Grand Theft Auto release date isn't expected to be announced by Rockstar Games anytime soon. And some of that can be blamed on the current Grand Theft Auto 5 game available on PS4 and Xbox One. Parent company Take-Two Interactive has been singing the praises of the title, which is now setting new records years after its initial launch. So it's quite possible that Grand Theft Auto 6 won't come out until we get PS5 and Xbox Scarlet, or whatever they're going to wind up calling it.
Xbox Series X.
Oh, is that what it is officially?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, God. Okay, can they just, why can't they just do a regular number system? I'm sorry, Microsoft, it's like, wake the hell up. I'm sorry.
Have you seen
Xbox,
what the Series
Xbox
X
360,
looks like?
Xbox One, Xbox Series X. It's like, look, you've got
it's
Xbox
One. Computer now.
No, but you've got Xbox One now. just start the sequence. Just go Xbox 2. Look, you're never going to get to 360 again. So we're fine. Do Xbox 1 and 2.
Jeez. With this whole GTA 5, our own Frank Messina, co-host of the Better Half podcast, I think to this day he's still playing GTA 5. And he's one of the ones that's keeping this series, game, not even a series, this game alive.
I have it. I don't know if it came with my
I think PS4. I have it too.
I think I got it for free. I got it for free when I got my PS4.
Oh, sweet.
But I've never opened it because I know it's like it's I just don't want to dive in because once I dive in,
it's an addicting game.
Yeah, I'll be completely obsessed. And I only have room for one obsession, Dead by Daylight. That's it.
There's only so much you can do in a day.
There really is, and most of it's Dead by Daylight. So that is Grand Theft Auto.
Alrighty.
What do you got?
So I have a series now. I might be standing corrected on this one, but I tried looking into it. I don't remember a game. Again, it's always going back to the N64. I feel like a lot of things skip the N64.
They didn't have a lot of third-party support. So.
No. A Turtles game. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't think...
No, they didn't have one.
Yeah, they didn't have one. They had one, again, GameCube. They definitely came back on GameCube and stuff. And actually, there was some really good games on the GameCube. I think Turtles 3 Nexus or something on GameCube was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. They didn't have like a Turtles tournament fighter game?
That was on Super Nintendo and Nintendo.
Okay.
And again, there may be one out there, so that's why this one's a little bit of a grain of salt. But you get the first 2 Turtle games on Nintendo.
I'm doing the research as we speak.
There you go. The first 3 on Nintendo, because my personal favorite being Turtles 2, the arcade game.
Of course.
And then Super Nintendo, you get Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, phenomenal. But yeah, I just don't remember an N64 Turtles game.
Working on it. We had a Genesis game,
Manhattan Project.
Yeah, and Tournament Fighters.
No, the
tournament Hyperstone Heist. Yeah. Tournament Fighters was Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Oh, and they released it on NES in 1994.
They did. Yeah, it was like one of the last games. Yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah, well, you know why? Because Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm assuming their popularity may have waned for a while because they went from the Tournament Fighters in 93, 94. We didn't get another console game until 2003.
Yeah.
So they went. They went through a good, almost like a 10-year gap. There was a Game Boy Advance game in 2003, but then that was also released on GameCube. There was a GameCube, Xbox, PS2, and PC game based on the 2003 TV series, and that's why it came back.
Yeah. So
because it had died out for a while because there was no television show.
Yeah, but I would have thought just the popularity of itself, like just the gameplay would have lent to something. I would have thought, especially again if you go 3D. If they can make Superman 64, they can make Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 64.
Very true. So, and as of right now, I don't know if we have one for current systems. Do we have one for current systems? I'm looking now.
I don't think so, unless you want to count the arcade one up.
No, we do. Mutants in Manhattan.
Oh, yes.
2016.
Yes.
Oh,
I think I demoed that one.
Oh, and I didn't realize they popped up in Injustice 2.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're downloadable characters. I forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they are on current systems. It was just that there was that 10-year gap. So they not only did they not make it to the N64, they didn't make it to the original PlayStation or the Sega Saturn either.
Okay.
So they skipped all of that, and they never
a lot of stuff didn't make it to the Saturn.
They never went up on the Dreamcast because the Dreamcast died before they came back in.
Right. Yeah, I would have thought that should have been an N64, like that series. Yeah. I guess I didn't realize, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together, the gap, because it was still coming out on handheld for a little bit. So
yeah, so there you go. I'm gonna jump in on one that you haven't mentioned yet, and I'm very surprised you haven't mentioned it. And that is the Mega Man series. Mega Man, now the platformer series existed. We got, I want to say, 6 games on the NES, right? Mm-hmm. And then Super Nintendo gave birth to the Mega Man X series, so we got the Mega Man X games
and Mega Man 7
and Mega Man 7. Where did
8 ended up on PlayStation.
8 ended up on PlayStation, and then there was a long gap. We got Mega Man 64, which was Mega Man Legends on PlayStation and N64, but then the GameCube and the Wii got nothing.
Well, the Wii,
in terms of platformers, I don't want to go into battle games and stuff.
No. Neither am I. But the Wii, I mean, you're right with GameCube. I don't think there was a proper
platformer.
Oh no! Wasn't there an X series on? No, that was PS2. I think X7 ended up on PS2.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So the X series was on X2, X3 were Super Nintendo.
Then it moved to PlayStation.
And X3 moved to PlayStation and Saturn, and they got X3, X4, and then PlayStation and PC got X5. PlayStation got X6. PlayStation 2 got X7, X8.
That's what it was. Okay. Because the Wii,
there was Mega Man X Command Mission on GameCube,
but that was the battle.
It wasn't the same.
So. All right, I didn't think of that one. Probably because I kept thinking the collection, but in my head, I don't know why I was thinking
well,
that.
That's the thing. Like they released collections all over the place, but they didn't release an actual Mega Man.
Proper
for GameCube or
9 and 10 were on the Wii. Remember, they were on the WiiWare. They were the download. In fact, I'm pretty sure Mega Man 9 was exclusive to the Wii in the beginning.
Maybe not exclusive. You are. Okay, so yeah. All right, you're right. I did miss the 9, but yeah. Okay, so then it was really just the GameCube that seemed to not get any love.
So that one, and then would you consider though Mega Man Legends like an offshoot of Mega Man?
I would have because again, remember the discussion we had earlier about how everybody was all about 3D. So I think that like N64, I don't think would have even thought about a 2D side-scrolling Mega Man. So I just so that's why I kind of would throw that in there as like
did do one. Fair enough.
They tried to do a platformer version on the N64. It's just that it was 3D. It's like saying that N64 didn't have a Mario game because the Mario game on it was 3D and not 2D.
No, I know, but all right, because that kind of like to me was like part of this, like Super Mario 64 is in the lineage, where to me like Mega Man Legends isn't part of like Mega Man 1 through 11 at this point. But again, that's just
I can understand that. I mean, and you know what, you can.
I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just
no. I was you can argue it either way. And I understand. that.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I mean, Mega Man did disappear off of at least one console generation.
It did. So. Yeah, because we thought 8 was it, in fact, and then and then 9 actually you can almost contribute Mega Man 9 as the reason we started getting again 8-bit brand new 8-bit games and series. Double Dragon eventually came out again with a brand new sequel in 8-bit, and some of these other games and to
Streets
me,
of Rage is on the way.
It's on its way, and there's tons of others in between, but I don't really when Mega Man 9 was announced. With the way the graphics were, I remember being like, I haven't seen this in a long, long time. And this is really cool.
Yeah, it was a nice introduction to that throwback 2D style because we hadn't seen that in a long time. And, kudos to Capcom for doing it because, all of a sudden, like, and I think, you can thank online, PlayStation 4, Xbox Live, all that stuff, like the online system, because you can download games now that people were making I want to say simpler games, but
that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I remember reading an interview and someone was like, oh, you really, it was daring. It was a challenge and a leap of faith to make Mega Man 9 in that 8-bit style. And they were like, this is what people want. This is like kind of the tried and true Mega Man, and we're going to do it. And it ended up being amazing. It's one of the most difficult games ever made, but it was amazing.
Yeah. Nope. I definitely agree with that because there are many Mega Man games I have not beaten, and that includes 9, 10, and 11.
There's many that I have.
Yeah. I think I have the first 5 under my belt.
Okay. Cool.
So, if I remember.
All All right. So, and I kind of have, again, I was a bit limited, unfortunately, this weekend with review, being looked into this, but
that's okay. I've got the Google.
There we go. The Google. Castlevania, a proper GameCube Castlevania game.
I believe you are incorrect.
Oh, okay.
But let me pull that up.
Okay. And again, we can say that as far as, Castlevania's 1, 2, and 3 on the NES, Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo.
We did get Castlevania 64.
Castlevania 64 and the other one that came out on the N64. And then we get that Castlevania Fighter, which you can kind of, but also we got on the WiiWare Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth, which is kind of goes back to the side scroller. It's kind of like a remake of the Game Boy game, but still.
I'm still
and as much as what we talked about earlier with the Metroidvania style games, Castlevania ended up moving to the handheld, where a lot of them came out on Advance, a lot of them came out on DS.
Yeah.
DS.
Oh, you know what? You are correct. For some odd reason, I thought Lament of Innocence was on PS2 and GameCube, but it only came out on PS2. I think for a while Sony had the full rights to them because it didn't even that didn't even come out on Xbox.
It's funny. I thought I had to look into it too because I thought Lament was on GameCube as well.
Yeah. But Curse of Darkness was on Xbox and PS2. So yeah, you are correct. GameCube did not get any Castlevania. They didn't. It doesn't even look like they got like a compilation or anything either.
No, I don't think it was. No, nothing.
They got nothing.
Castlevania skipped that one.
That could go back to like the reason why GameCube wasn't a success is because they could not lure any third party over to do games, and I'm not sure because what is Castlevania's Capcom?
Yeah. No, Konami.
Konami. I'm sorry. Konami may not have developed any games for the GameCube. That's another thing to look at.
And it's funny, but GameCube really started getting a lot of compilations. They had the Sonic compilations, they had the Mega Man compilations. Mm-hmm. I think it would have been pretty cool to get a Castlevania compilation on the GameCube because that would have worked just to jam everything onto the one little CD. But I think
they did.
Oh, what did they have?
Konami. They didn't make a lot. They made 14 games on the GameCube, and it was and they were all weird, like Disney Sports Football and Skateboarding, Frogger, three Frogger games,
but no Castlevania.
Karaoke Revolution Party, King Arthur, Metal Gear Solid, Twin Snakes.
Oh yeah,
probably the best one they made. Mm-hmm. And then actually the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. 1, 2, 3, 4 games.
The Konami. Oh, that's cool.
Yep. And then a Yu-Gi-Oh! And an International Superstar Soccer.
All right, there you go.
That's it. So yeah, they just did not. And again, it could be that Sony in the beginning had the sole rights to the Castlevania games, which is why it just skipped it.
Could be.
Yeah,
could be. So
interesting. Yeah, I did not realize that.
So that's basically my list. It was a short one, but because I was also very busy.
I don't think the Wii got a platformer. They got the fighting game, Castlevania.
They got the fighting game, but I'm counting WiiWare. I count WiiWare on the Wii. That Castlevania Adventure Rebirth.
Adventure Rebirth. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Got it. I didn't get that far while I was looking it up. So. And then, of course, we got other games for the newer systems.
Yeah.
So now we're just waiting for one on the Switch. Switch doesn't have one yet.
Castlevania?
Yeah, does it?
Yeah, no, I got the collection. Simon and Trevor and no, I know. Yeah, you never know.
Actually, to be honest, current gen doesn't have any. PS4 and Xbox One don't have a new Castlevania game either. The last one released, according to this, on console was Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 in 2014 on PS3 and 360 and PC.
Okay.
So yeah, because everything else we've gotten online, we got the collection with all the old ones, and then we got the Rondo of Blood Dracula X.
Yep.
2-pack.
And I'm trying to remember when the most recent handheld one, though. I think there was one on DS. I think there was one on 3DS.
Hold on. The last one was actually on the PSP. Castlevania: The Dracula X Chronicles.
I had that.
That was the 3D remake of Rondo of Blood. Yeah. Okay.
That was cool.
Going back before that, though, the last handheld one was... not counting iOS. We're talking actual slot machine.
A real system.
DS, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia.
Oh, all the way back on DS. Okay.
Yeah, 2008 was the last handheld.
Portrait of Ruin, the first one on the DS, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I see that here on the list.
I might beat that one, actually.
That was 2006.
Yeah, it's right when the DS came out. So
cool. All right, that's your list, huh?
Yeah, like I said, it was a short one, but
I've got two more to talk about. And one of them was interesting because I didn't think about this franchise until I started looking at lists of like top selling games and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, it's like, this is interesting. What happened here? Donkey Kong, beloved series and everything, got completely redefined on the Super Nintendo with Donkey Kong Country. Mm-hmm. And on Super Nintendo, we got 3 of those, right? Donkey Kong Country, and then we got what was it? Diddy Kong,
Diddy's Conquest, and then Dixie's something or other.
Dixie's something or other. So we got 1, 2, and 3, and then on the Nintendo 64. Granted, we didn't get a Donkey Kong Country game, but we got a Donkey Kong 64 game. I don't know if you remember.
It's in the lineage,
which was kind of in the lineage. Yep, and then again on the GameCube.
I think Donkey Kong 64 was the reason why you had to buy the memory upgrade.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah,
on the N64.
Yeah, so we got Donkey Kong 64 on the GameCube. Donkey Kong became just straight up music games. You got Donkey Konga and Donkey something Tropical Beat and something.
Yes.
And then there was no platformer Donkey Kong, which was interesting considering how popular Donkey Kong Country was. But then on the Wii, Donkey Kong Country Returns was released, so they went back to the Donkey Kong Country. I don't know if I don't know what Tropical Freeze was on. Was that on Wii U?
Tropical Freeze was on the Wii U, and then it was remade for the Switch.
Right. So
Tropical Freeze is actually really good.
So again, for a system that was struggling to get third-party support, you think it would have been a no-brainer for them to release a traditional Donkey Kong platformer or Donkey Kong Country platformer on the GameCube.
I feel like Nintendo, as they usually do, trying to innovate gameplay, and they probably took that with the GameCube. I think some of the those music games were very popular back then.
That they were.
So they're just trying to do. I mean, I never owned it, but to have the conga drums, yeah,
Yeah, they were definitely trying to sell ancillary items with these things. Yeah. So remember the skateboard that came with the Tony Hawk game?
Yes. Kill yourself trying to play it.
Yeah, I did not. I can say I did not own that.
No, neither.
But yeah, so Donkey Kong was an interesting one or at least Donkey Kong Country, was an interesting one that. So no Donkey Kong platformer on the GameCube. And then the last one that I want to discuss is one that was actually, I believe, they initially wanted to develop it, and again, this is going back to the N64. Final Fantasy VII.
Oh.
Final Fantasy VII for the N64 was initially in the plans. Again, one of the most iconic games on the PlayStation, a game that I talk about ad nauseum. But I also am one of those people where I've only played Final Fantasy VII. And 80% or 90% of 8 before I gave up for some reason. The characters weren't as interesting. But Final Fantasy VII, there was an initial plan, and at the time, the president of Square, or at least the interview with the president of Square when he was a developer, I did not get a name. Sorry about that. Squaresoft. And this was from him, there was a management level above me, and I talked with them to make the decision. But PlayStation games being on CDs was the biggest factor. If you wanted to make a 3D action game on a Nintendo 64 cartridge with that limited space, you could do it. But I wanted to create a 3D role-playing game. It was very clear in my head what I wanted to make, but that would have been difficult on Nintendo's hardware. The biggest problem was, of course, memory. Based on our calculations, there was no way Final Fantasy VII could all fit on a ROM cartridge. So our main reason for choosing the PlayStation was really just because it was the only console which would allow us to use CD-ROM media.
So just ease of access.
Yeah, I mean, and Nintendo missed out on one of the most, genre-defining games of, video game history. Now, what's interesting though is when you think about like the Resident Evil series. like somehow Nintendo found a way to get Resident Evil 2 to fit on a cartridge when it was a 2-disc game on the PlayStation. However, Final Fantasy VII was a 3-disc game, and I'm just assuming based on based on the sheer size of that, it just couldn't be done on a cartridge.
And yeah, and not only that, but CDs are so much cheaper to make than having to buy the carts from Nintendo themselves, because they were the only ones selling the cartridges.
Right. So ultimately, like, I mean, if they had done Final Fantasy VII on a cartridge, I can only imagine it would have been like probably $120 or $130 game.
Oh, probably forget about it. Yeah. It'd probably look like the Final Fantasy VII you have on NES.
Oh yeah, which is really cute. I gotta play that through. Would that count as a retro game?
I don't think so, unfortunately, because I don't think it's the whole game. They couldn't fit the whole game on there. It's only a part of it.
True.
Hey, speaking of Final Fantasy VII, did you see they released the opening movie?
Yes,
to the game?
I'm not watching it.
You're holding off on it?
Yes. All right. I've already got the game on pre-order. I don't have to wait that much longer. It's coming out in April now, so I will wait. I will wait.
It's quick.
Yeah, I will wait to get my hands on it to watch the opening sequence.
All right.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
And Final Fantasy VII was the last one on my list.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, we covered quite a few.
We did, absolutely. So, folks, definitely, let us know in your comments. Do you have any, franchises that skipped a generation? Maybe on one of these other systems, like on an Atari or something like that. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know, or even maybe if you wanted to see, a franchise that stopped to keep going as well. Definitely let us know, because we'd be interested in hearing from you.
Yeah, we definitely do. So make those comments on our page and whatnot. And Larry, I think we're ready to steer this into port to steal your line.
Oh, okay. Yes, no problem.
I don't know where you thought we were going.
I don't know where we were going. I thought something completely different.
No.
Okay.
You are completely mistaken.
Sweet. All right. So, again, you can find us everywhere, basically. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Retro Gamers Podcast, on the Twitter at Retro Gamers Pod. And where can they contact us?
They can contact us at email at theretrogamers.com.
Awesome.
That's about it.
And,
or just message us on Facebook. We tend to respond sometimes.
We try to.
We try our best.
We'll also have a couple contests coming up in the near future. We'll let you know about those, some cool things to give away. And folks, with that, we'll call it.
I think we'll call it, but what are we going to call it?
We're going to call it another episode, and we will catch you right here next week. Blur it out, blur it out, blur it out on the Retro Gamers Podcast.